After 40, belly fat follows hormones, not effort. Many people reach this age believing the solution is simple. Eat less, move more, try harder. So they do. They skip dessert. They walk every evening. They drink less soda than they did 10 years ago. And yet something feels unfair. The waistline slowly expands while habits improve. This is usually the moment frustration begins. Not because people don't care about their health, but because the old rules stop producing the old results. What worked at 25 becomes unreliable at 45. The body's not broken, it is changing its priorities. Before 40, the body prefers to burn incoming energy. After 40, it prefers to store it, especially around the abdomen. This shift is quiet. No warning signal, no dramatic event, just a gradual tightening of clothes that once fit comfortably. Many interpret this as a discipline problem. They blame their willpower. They assume they became less strict with themselves. But in most cases, effort did not decrease. Biology changed. Hormones now influence where energy goes, how long it stays available, and how easily fat is released. Insulin reacts more strongly to the same meals. Muscle tissue, the body's metabolic engine, slowly declines. Stress hormones remain elevated longer after ordinary daily pressure. The result is subtle but persistent. Energy is stored faster than it is used. So the question is no longer, why am I eating too much? The better question becomes, why is my body storing differently than before? Understanding this removes guilt, and replacing guilt with knowledge is the first step toward control. Because after 40, health stops responding to force. It starts responding to strategy. In this video, we will explore why the midlife body stores fat differently, what actually drives abdominal weight gain, and how small adjustments, not extreme restrictions, begin restoring balance. Not by fighting the body, but by working with it. Most people respond to belly fat the same way they always have. They try to reduce food, they cut portions, they avoid snacks, they remove sugar from coffee, they promise themselves they will be stricter starting Monday. At first, this seems logical. For years, body weight followed a simple equation. Less intake produced visible change, and sometimes, in the beginning, it still does. The scale drops slightly. Clothes feel looser for a short time. Motivation rises. But then something confusing happens. Progress slows, then stops, then quietly reverses. The person has not returned to old habits. They may actually be eating less than before, yet the waistline resumes expanding. This moment is usually interpreted as failure. People assume they lost discipline. They believe they miscalculated calories. They blame hidden snacks, late meals or weak willpower, but the body is not responding to mathematics anymore. It is responding to perceived survival conditions. After 40, hormonal signaling becomes more influential than raw intake numbers. When food is reduced too aggressively, the body does not simply burn stored fat faster. Instead, it attempts to protect stability. Metabolism adapts downward. Movement becomes subtly more efficient. You burn fewer calories performing the same activities you have done for years. You do not notice this consciously. You still walk the same distance, you still work the same hours. But internally, the body conserves energy. At the same time, hunger signals intensify. Not dramatic hunger, persistent hunger. The kind that stays in the background all day. The kind that makes concentration harder. The kind that leads to evening fatigue. This is not weakness, it is communication. The brain interprets restriction as uncertainty, and uncertainty activates protective chemistry. Cortisol remains elevated longer. Sleep quality decreases slightly. Recovery slows. Under these conditions, the body shifts its priorities, protect essential tissues, and store available energy efficiently. And the most efficient storage location during midlife becomes the abdomen. Abdominal fat is metabolically accessible. It is easy to mobilize quickly if needed, so the body prefers it when it anticipates repeated shortages. From the body's perspective, Inconsistent intake looks like an unstable environment. So while a person believes they are fighting fat, the body believes it is preparing for scarcity. This is why many midlife diets feel increasingly exhausting. More restriction produces less visible change, more effort produces more fatigue, and motivation declines not from laziness, but from biology resisting pressure. The individual often escalates discipline. They remove another meal, they add longer cardio sessions, they push harder to regain control. Yet control keeps slipping, because the strategy belongs to a younger metabolism. At this stage of life, the goal is no longer to convince the body to release weight through force. The goal becomes reassurance. When the body perceives stability, regular nourishment, predictable activity, adequate recovery, protective responses begin to soften. Energy becomes easier to access again. Hunger becomes quieter. Fat storage slows naturally. So the issue is not that the person stopped trying. The issue is that the body changed the rules. And continuing to apply old rules often strengthens the very signals that increase abdominal storage. Understanding this changes the approach entirely. Instead of asking, how can I eat less? A more effective question appears. How can I make my body feel safe enough to stop storing? To understand midlife belly fat, we have to look at one hormone first, insulin. Insulin is not the enemy. It is a transport signal. Every time you eat, insulin tells the body where incoming energy should go, into immediate use, into muscle storage, or into fat storage. When you're younger, muscles respond quickly. They absorb glucose easily. Energy is burned or stored in active tissue. But after 40, something subtle changes. Muscle cells become less sensitive to insulin's signal. Not broken, just less responsive. So the body compensates. It produces more insulin to achieve the same result. This works for a while. Blood sugar stays normal. You feel mostly fine. But the destination of energy begins to shift. Because muscle doors open slower, fat storage doors open faster, and the abdomen is particularly receptive. This is why a person can eat familiar meals and still notice gradual weight gain. The intake didn't change. The routing changed. The body is redirecting energy. Many people respond by eating less frequently. Sometimes that helps, sometimes it backfires. When meals become irregular, insulin spikes become less predictable. The body reacts defensively, releasing more stress hormones to maintain stability. Cortisol then enters the picture. Cortisol's job is to ensure survival during uncertainty. It keeps blood sugar available. It encourages the body to store easily accessible fuel. Again, the abdomen becomes the preferred site, so the situation becomes layered. Reduced insulin sensitivity encourages storage. Elevated cortisol reinforces it. Declining muscle mass reduces daily energy usage. None of these changes are dramatic alone. Together they reshape metabolism. This explains a common experience. A person maintains the same calorie intake they had in their 30s, yet gains weight in their 40s. Not rapidly, gradually. A kilogram here, another the following year, until one day they feel like their body changed without permission. But the body did not act randomly. It followed signals. Muscle tissue plays a central role in this story. Muscle is not just for strength. It is metabolic authority. When muscle is active and regularly used, it absorbs energy without requiring large insulin responses. When muscle declines, through inactivity, stress, or poor recovery, the body loses its primary storage buffer, so energy seeks alternative storage. Fat becomes the efficient option. This is why long periods of sitting begin to matter more than occasional exercise sessions. A person may exercise 3 times per week, but remain sedentary for most of the day. The body interprets this as low-demand living, and storage becomes logical. Another factor emerges: sleep. After 40, sleep often becomes lighter, shorter, interrupted. Even small sleep reductions increase hunger hormones the next day and decrease insulin sensitivity temporarily. Not enough to notice immediately, but enough to repeat daily. So the system compounds: slight insulin resistance, slightly higher cortisol, slightly less muscle activity, slightly poorer sleep. Each change is modest. Together they are powerful, and importantly, none of this means the body is failing. It means the body is prioritizing survival efficiency over visual leanness. When resources feel uncertain, storing energy near vital organs is protective. So belly fat after 40 is not random weight gain. It is organized adaptation, which means the solution is also organized, not punishment, not extreme dieting, but restoring signals that communicate safety, steady nourishment, regular movement throughout the day, adequate recovery, and metabolic demand from muscle. When the signals change, the storage pattern changes, not instantly, but reliably. If belly fat after 40 is driven by signals, then progress comes from changing signals, not intensifying restriction. The first signal is timing. In younger years, the body tolerates irregular eating patterns. Skipping meals, late dinners, or constant snacking may not show immediate consequences. After 40, the same patterns create confusion for the metabolic system. When food arrives unpredictably, the body prepares for instability. Insulin rises higher than necessary. Cortisol stays active longer. Energy storage becomes precautionary. Regular meal timing does not accelerate fat loss directly. It reduces defensive behavior. When the body learns when nourishment will arrive, it no longer needs to hold extra reserves. The second signal is movement frequency. Many people believe exercise must be intense to matter, so they compensate for sedentary days with occasional demanding workouts. But metabolism responds more strongly to repetition than intensity. Short, frequent movement sessions, walking, standing, light activity, repeatedly activate muscle tissue. Each activation improves insulin sensitivity for several hours. This means energy is directed toward use rather than storage. One long workout cannot replace an entire day of inactivity, but consistent movement across the day gradually reshapes how fuel is handled. The third signal is recovery. After 40, the body reacts differently to exhaustion. In earlier years, pushing through fatigue still produced improvement. Now, excessive strain raises cortisol for extended periods. The body cannot distinguish between heavy training and survival stress. Both produce similar chemistry. When recovery is insufficient, fat storage increases even while effort increases. This is why many midlife routines feel paradoxical. More effort, less change. Improvement requires a balance. Enough challenge to stimulate adaptation, but enough recovery to prevent alarm. The fourth signal is muscle demand. Muscle tissue communicates safety to the metabolic system. When muscles are regularly used against resistance, the body expects energy to be needed again, so it becomes willing to release stored fuel. Without resistance activity, the body anticipates lower demand. Storage becomes efficient. This does not require extreme strength training. Even moderate resistance performed consistently sends a strong message. Energy will be used. And the final signal is stress interpretation. Life after 40 often contains more responsibility. Work decisions, financial pressure, family care. The mind adapts, but the chemistry remains responsive. Mental tension produces physical storage signals, not because thoughts create fat directly, but because the body prepares for prolonged effort. Simple practices that lower baseline tension, quiet walking, breathing pauses, moments without stimulation, reduce the background message of urgency. Over time, the body stops preparing for constant emergencies. None of these adjustments are dramatic alone, but together they replace a message of scarcity with a message of stability. And stability changes storage behavior. Fat loss at this stage is rarely rapid. It becomes steady, not a reaction to force, a response to consistency. When signals align, the body no longer needs to defend its reserves. It begins to cooperate. The most important shift after 40 is mental. Many people approach health as a short campaign. They choose a start date, increase discipline sharply, and expect visible change quickly. When results slow, motivation fades, not because they lack commitment, but because they expected urgency to work the same way it once did. Midlife physiology responds differently. The body is no longer reacting to isolated actions, it is evaluating patterns. A strict week followed by exhaustion sends mixed signals. A harsh diet followed by compensation meals sends mixed signals. An intense workout followed by days of inactivity sends mixed signals. The body values predictability more than intensity. Consistency reduces the need for protection. So progress becomes less about pushing harder and more about removing contradiction. Regular sleep communicates safety. Repeated movement communicates demand. Balanced meals communicate availability. Calm routines communicate stability. Together, these form an environment the body trusts. Trust changes behavior. When the system trusts that energy will arrive again tomorrow, it stops preparing for shortage. Stored fuel becomes usable fuel. This is why sustainable change often feels almost uneventful. No dramatic drops on the scale, no sudden transformation in the mirror. Instead, mornings feel clearer. Energy remains steadier across the day. Hunger becomes quieter. Clothes fit differently before numbers change. These are metabolic signs, not cosmetic ones. They indicate cooperation has begun. Many abandon progress at this stage because it feels slow, but slow is not failure. Slow is stability replacing volatility. Rapid change often requires strong pressure. Strong pressure triggers defense. Defense restores the previous state. Gentle persistence avoids that cycle. Over months, small adjustments accumulate. Muscle responds to repeated demand. Hormones respond to reliable timing. Stress chemistry settles when urgency decreases. Fat storage gradually loosens its priority. This is not a program, it is direction, and direction matters more than speed. After 40, the body rewards what is repeatable, not heroic effort, reliable behaviour. So the question shifts again, not how fast can I change, but what can I continue doing every week without interruption? The answer to that question usually becomes the answer to lasting health. At this stage, many people ask a practical question. If hormones influence belly fat, does that mean control is lost? The answer is no. Hormones respond to behaviour, just more gradually than before. Think of the body less like a switch and more like a conversation. In younger years, a single action could create a visible effect. Skip meals for a few days, increase activity, and weight would quickly change. After 40, the body listens longer before it answers. It waits to see if a behaviour repeats. It waits to see if the environment is stable. Only then does it adjust its internal settings. This is why sudden changes feel ineffective. A strict diet for 10 days does not persuade the system. A calm routine for 10 weeks does. Hormonal balance is not forced. It is negotiated through repetition. For example, regular morning light exposure improves circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm influences cortisol timing. Cortisol timing influences hunger and storage later in the day. No single morning walk removes belly fat, but repeated mornings recalibrate internal clocks. The same applies to muscle use. One resistance session does little. Repeated signals tell the body that strength is required again tomorrow. So muscle is preserved instead of reduced, and preserved muscle improves insulin response. Again, not dramatic, cumulative. Nutrition follows the same rule. Perfect meals are less powerful than predictable meals. When the body expects nourishment at consistent intervals, stress chemistry softens. Energy release becomes smoother. Late-day cravings decrease naturally. People often look for a decisive action, a food to eliminate, a supplement to add, a single habit to master. But midlife physiology responds to patterns, not tricks. The body is measuring reliability. Are you sleeping at similar hours? Are you moving regularly across the week? Are you eating in a rhythm the body can anticipate? Each repeated yes reduces the need to store. Over time, waist measurements change without dramatic effort. Not because the body was pushed, but because it stopped defending. This approach feels unfamiliar in a culture that rewards intensity. Yet biology prefers reassurance. The goal is not to defeat the body. The goal is to make cooperation inevitable. And cooperation appears when signals stay consistent long enough to be believed. So progress after 40 is not slow because the body resists change. It is slow because the body verifies change. Once it trusts the pattern, adjustment becomes natural and sustainable. There is another misunderstanding that often appears in midlife. People focus only on visible fat while ignoring invisible strain. Belly fat is not just stored energy, it is also a marker. It reflects how the body manages pressure over time. When daily life demands attention without recovery, deadlines, responsibilities, constant information, the nervous system remains slightly activated. Not enough to feel panic, enough to stay alert. This background alertness influences metabolism. The body prepares for repeated effort. It keeps fuel available in the bloodstream longer, and when that fuel is unused, it is stored where access is easiest, the abdomen. This is why two individuals can follow similar diets yet develop very different results. One lives in constant urgency, the other has moments of pause. Chemistry follows perception. If the brain interprets life as ongoing demand, the body prepares for endurance rather than efficiency. So reducing abdominal storage sometimes requires reducing internal noise. Not silence from the world, but silence within the day. Short periods without stimulation matter more than people expect. A slow walk without headphones, a few minutes of steady breathing, finishing a meal without a screen. These do not burn many calories, but they lower baseline activation. Lower activation changes hormone patterns. Hormone patterns influence storage decisions. This is also why sleep quality affects waist size. During deeper sleep, the body organizes energy use for the next day. It resets sensitivity to insulin. It lowers evening hunger signals. When sleep is fragmented, the system remains cautious. Appetite rises slightly. Cravings prefer quick energy. Storage becomes easier. Again, none of these effects feel dramatic in a single day, but repetition accumulates. Many people search for motivation when progress stalls. They believe they need stronger determination. Often they need a calmer environment. Health after 40 improves not only through action, but through removing constant reaction. You do not need to control every variable. You need enough predictable calm for the body to stop preparing for emergencies. As urgency decreases, efficiency returns, energy becomes steadier, appetite becomes clearer, and storage slowly becomes optional instead of automatic. So the goal is not a perfect routine. It is a livable rhythm, one that your body recognizes as sustainable. When life feels survivable, the body stops storing for survival. By midlife, many people believe fat loss should begin with motivation. They wait to feel determined. They wait for the right Monday. They wait for a moment when energy, schedule, and discipline finally align. But after 40, progress rarely begins with motivation. It begins with removal of interference. The body at this stage is not refusing change. It is responding to noise. Small, repeated disruptions accumulate throughout the day. Irregular meals, constant notifications, long sitting periods, late light exposure, unfinished mental tasks. Each one is minor. Together they create metabolic hesitation. The body delays decisions when the environment feels unpredictable. Instead of burning freely, it pauses. Instead of releasing energy, it stores temporarily. This temporary storage becomes permanent only because the signals never fully settle. So improvement begins not by adding more effort, but by subtracting competing signals. For example, consider the late evening. Many people do not eat excessively at night, but they remain stimulated. Screens, bright light, unfinished thoughts. The brain interprets this as extended daytime. Cortisol remains active longer than intended. Insulin sensitivity remains reduced the next morning. Nothing dramatic happens in a single night, but repeated evenings create a pattern. The body prepares for activity tomorrow and stores today's fuel accordingly. Now consider morning behaviour. Waking and immediately entering information, messages, news, work, creates urgency before movement. The nervous system activates before muscles do. So the first fuel of the day supports alertness, not physical use. Again, not harmful once, but repeated daily, it shifts how energy is handled. The body expects mental demand, not physical demand. Storage becomes logical preparation. This is why short morning movement changes metabolism disproportionately. Not because of calories burned, but because of order. Movement before stimulation tells the body, energy will be used physically today. So release becomes safer than storage. The same principle applies to meals. After 40, mixed signals around food matter more than quantity. Frequent grazing keeps insulin elevated but unpredictable. Long fasting followed by large meals produces strong storage responses. The body prefers rhythm. Predictable intake allows insulin to rise and fall cleanly. Clean rises allow clean releases. Without rhythm, the body protects availability. Protection looks like fat retention. Another interference appears in attention. Constant task switching keeps the nervous system partially engaged. The brain never fully exits alert mode. This background alertness increases baseline cortisol slightly, not enough to feel stress, enough to alter storage preference. Moments of singular focus or brief pauses reverse this effect. Not relaxation as a concept, but completion. When the brain finishes a task fully, the body reduces preparedness. Reduced preparedness lowers storage urgency. So metabolic change becomes less about intensity and more about clarity. Clear signals produce decisive responses. When days repeat similar patterns, waking, moving, eating, resting, the body predicts the future accurately. Prediction removes the need for reserve accumulation. Many people attempt to solve midlife weight gain with stronger interventions, more restriction, more cardio, more complex plans, but complexity itself becomes noise. The body must interpret too many variables. It chooses safety. Safety favors storage. Simplicity reduces interpretation. If activity occurs daily, if meals occur regularly, if evenings quiet gradually, the body no longer needs contingency energy. Then a subtle shift happens. Instead of guarding fat, the body rotates it. Rotation is slow. Fat cells release small amounts regularly rather than dramatically. Energy levels stabilize before appearance changes. This stage is often misread as stagnation, but stability is the first visible success. Erratic hunger disappears, sleep deepens slightly, and afternoon clarity extends. Only after regulation improves does reduction follow. Because fat loss after 40 is not extraction, it is permission. The body releases what it trusts will not be needed immediately again. So the question is not, how do I burn more? The question becomes, what convinces my body it can spare this energy? Convincing requires consistency, not perfection, repetition. A missed day does nothing. A repeated pattern changes expectation. Expectation changes hormone timing. Hormone timing changes storage behavior. Over weeks, small releases accumulate. The waist narrows gradually, not because fat was attacked, but because it stopped being protected. And protection stops only when prediction becomes reliable. In youth, change rewards intensity. In midlife, change rewards coherence. When daily actions agree with each other, the body stops preparing for contradiction. It no longer stores for emergencies that never come. So the most effective midlife strategy is not aggressive. It is believable. Believable to the body. When behavior becomes believable, metabolism becomes cooperative, and cooperation makes change permanent. By now, the message becomes simple. Belly fat after 40 is not a personal failure. It is feedback. Your body is describing how it interprets your daily environment, timing, movement, rest, and demand. When the environment feels uncertain, it stores. When the environment feels predictable, it releases. So lasting change does not come from forcing results. It comes from becoming consistent enough that the body stops preparing for emergencies. You do not need extreme diets. You do not need punishment workouts. You need repeatable habits that your life can support every week. Start small. Wake and move before screens. Eat in a rhythm you can maintain. Let evenings slow down instead of extend. Give muscle a reason to stay active. These are not dramatic actions, but they are convincing ones. And a convinced body becomes a cooperative body. If this explanation helped you understand your body differently, stay with this channel. Each video is designed to make health simpler, calmer and sustainable after 40. Subscribe and continue learning how to work with your body, not against it.